I can,
We're
this is
waiting for
Highland, I
that.
can let everybody in. And do we want to have Christina go ahead and announce the Spanish channel before we kick anything off? Okay,
Yeah,
great. So
that
Christina,
works.
Just
once
FYI,
I-
this is Chuck. We've started recording and streaming now.
excellent.
Thank you.
So once I go ahead and let everybody in, I'll do that now. Then Christina, you can
and then
make
let
your
me know when
announcement.
you're ready, Highland.
Awesome.
So I'll wait for you, Christina, to speak.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Schouten.
Okay, so I think we're ready to get started. Christina, would you like to say a word about Spanish interpretation?
Of course. Buenos días, gracias por acompañarlos esta mañana. Hay traducción en español disponible para esta junta. Para acceder al canal en español, vaya a la selección por debajo de su pantalla por la derecha. Elige el icono del globo mundial y seleccione español. Si tiene alguna pregunta, escriba su pregunta en el chat o utilice la función de levantar la mano por debajo en su pantalla. Durante las actividades de los grupos pequeños, por favor regresen a la sala principal para la charla traducida en español. Gracias.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our fifth Washington County listening session of this late summer series of listening sessions. My name is Bridget Cook, and I will be the facilitator in the main room for today. I'm the executive director of Adelante Mujeres, which means Women Rise Up, and we're a Washington County-based nonprofit providing education, empowerment, and entrepreneurship services to our Spanish-speaking community. In addition to Spanish interpretation by Victor, we also have ASL interpretation by Mary. I want to, at this point, welcome Chair Harrington and invite her to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for sharing some of your time here on Saturday morning, August 29th. As Bridget mentioned, this is our fifth in a series of 6 listening sessions, community listening sessions, and we are really honored to have you sharing your thoughts and concerns with us. I am joined today with 2 other members of your 5-member county commission. I would ask Commissioner Dick Schouten to say hello.
Good morning, everyone.
And Commissioner Pam Treese.
Good morning, and thank you for participating.
I have had the opportunity to see the names of some of you who are participating today. Thank you. I'm pleased to see that we have some new folks joining us tonight, this being our second community-wide listening session. Bridget's going to take us through some information so that you better understand what brought us to this juncture. It's been a really unusual year here in 2020 with the presence of COVID in our community. We here at Washington County and the Board of Commissioners have been using new tools and technology to help us stay engaged with you. And I want you to know that we appreciate all the phone calls and emails and your participation in our web meetings along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bridget.
Great, thank you, Chair Harrington. Again, we're really happy to see all of you here, especially on this beautiful morning. I'm sure many of you'd like to be outside, and hopefully we'll have some time later today to enjoy the lovely weather. But this is so important to have your voice and your thoughts on how together we can make Washington County a better place for all of us. So again, my name is Bridget Cook, and I'm the Executive Director of Adelante Mujeres. And Adelante Mujeres is part of the Washington County Racial Equity Coalition, which includes 4 additional organizations. And those other organizations are Apano, Bienestar, the Coalition of Communities of Color, and VAN, or Vision Action Network. And we are working with the county and with other partners to facilitate these sessions. And as you have probably noticed, there are some slides that are rolling with information about the listening session, and these include agreements for today that will make this a positive experience for all of us. I'll just mention briefly what those agreements are. We ask that you stay engaged. Zoom meetings can be intimidating, they're hard. So we just want you to know we'd love to hear from you either verbally or through the chat. We also invite you to speak your own truth. We will all speak our own truths, and we'll try to avoid generalizations by sharing our own experiences and ideas. We also want to listen to understand. So to do that, let's stay curious about what others are saying. And because this is a listening session, we're going to avoid a tendency to debate. Debates are wonderful, but that's not the purpose of this time together this morning. Also be willing to do things a little bit differently and experience some discomfort. Likewise, as we said, this is a listening session, so we will not be expecting closure. Your comments will shine a light on issues, but we won't be getting a lot of answers today, but those will come later. We also ask that you maintain confidentiality, that what is shared in this room could hopefully maintain or remain in this room. Also want to mention that we're going to practice the stepping back and stepping forward. If you're typically somebody who is more outspoken, then we invite you to pause and allow space for others. And then if you're more reserved, this might be a time for you to step forward either through the chat or verbal comments by raising your hand. And we love having some of you been in prior meetings or prior listening sessions during this series. We love having you with us and are so grateful for your show of real commitment. We do ask that you pause a bit when it comes time for verbal comments, just to make sure that others who are new have a chance to share their thoughts. Lastly, again, because we do want to hear from as many people as possible, we ask that you keep your comments brief so that we'll allow time for everyone to speak. Again, this is a listening session, and so our commissioners are really here to listen, and they want to hear your thoughts on issues that are most important to you. We suggest that you, rather than asking them what they will do, we invite you to tell them what you would like them to do. Again, this is not a question and answer time, so you will not get immediate answers to your questions, but we will be tracking everything, and if there is a specific question, staff will follow up after this session. So one of the main reasons for this listening session is to get feedback from residents regarding the question of body-worn cameras. The killing of George Floyd prompted a lot of activity from the county commissioners. You have probably seen this timeline of slides that has been rolling along with the other slides of the PowerPoint. We might take a look at just that timeline right now, if possible, or we will see it as it rolls through. But that timeline sort of
Dr.
fleshes
Kevin,
out.
can we please get that slide up?
Yes, Madam Chair, Chuck is taking care of that right now for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So these slides will show what's happened since this tragedy has taken place, how the county has responded. So we'll just hold on a sec as that slide hopefully will appear. Okay, looks like it's coming up right here. So you can see that atrocious death of George Floyd, and then the county's response about a week later, the board's response related to the death of Mr. Floyd. And then the county chair had proposed to fully fund body-worn cameras for sheriff's patrol deputies. then followed by the chair meets with community organizations. And on June 16th, it received a community reinvestment proposal from CARE, Oregon, and community organizations. On June 16th was first mentioned shifting the planned town hall to do this series of community listening sessions. And on June 24th, you can see it's all happening very quickly. Washington County announces the listening sessions. And between July 10th and August 10th, there was a request for proposals on the part of the county to then hire the facilitating team, which the racial equity collaboration was the one of the groups to be chosen. On August 17th, we started the first listening session, and then those have been continuing August 17th, August 20th, August 24th. We can move to the next page. You might all see the next page. I don't yet. I know my internet is very slow where I'm at here. But then last Thursday, we had a session for the BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. And then we have today's session, which is an open community session. And then on Monday, we will have the last of this series of 6 sessions for persons with disabilities. And then there are a few follow-up slides there. Let's say we're having some challenges getting that up to then follow up so that the board then will be providing their commitment back to the community. All right, so thank you. I did want to mention here that the sheriff has publicly supported these listening sessions, and he offers a few key pieces of information on body-worn cameras. And there'll be 3 links that would be put into the chat box. So you can find in the chat a link to the current county policy, the sheriff's policy on body-worn cameras. You'll also find a link to frequently asked questions. And then the final link should be a fact sheet on body-worn cameras. So if you're interested in doing more research, those are great tools that we have at our hand. Plus, there's certainly a lot on the web now because this is such an important issue. Just one thing to keep in mind, the Board of County Commissioners does not have policy control over the sheriff. The sheriff is elected independently. They do have, however, annual budgetary control. So the Office of Sheriff is separate, but that said, if you have an opinion about whether or not the commissioners should have more or less authority over public safety policies, please feel free to express that in the chat or when it's time for comments. So I want to remind you again about Spanish interpretation. Christina, could you tell us again how that works?
Yes, buenos días. Hay traducción español disponible. Para acceder al canal en español, vaya a la sección por debajo de su pantalla por la derecha. Elige el icono del globo mundial y seleccione español. Si tiene alguna pregunta, escriba su pregunta en el chat o utilice la función de levantar la mano por debajo de su pantalla. Puede hacer su pregunta en español. Durante las actividades del grupo pequeño, por favor regresen a la sala principal para la charla en español. Gracias.
All right, I see we're all seeing now this final slide of the timeline. And so you see there on September 29th, the board will be providing direction to the staff. And on September 22nd, facilitators, those of us from the REC, will be presenting a community report to the board. So we can take that slide down now. Thank you very much. So before moving going on further, I just want to mention a bit about the county's role. So as a government body, the county has a unique role, similar that cities, state, and national governments also have their special functions. The county government often serves as a safety net for our community. And here in Washington County, programs range from health and human services with public health, women and infants and children, or WIC services and veterans programs. The county also houses the collaborative library system in partnership with our cities. And then the county has a variety of public safety programs, including the sheriff's office that we mentioned, community corrections, and juvenile justice. And as I mentioned, the county commissioners do not have any policy or programmatic oversight over the sheriff's office, although they do have oversight over the annual budget, which is adopted in late June for the July 1, June 30th fiscal year. So now that we have 3 county commissioners with us today, this makes this an official public meeting. So everything in this main room is recorded, and contact information of individuals who communicate, whether verbally or through the chat function, will be included as part of the county's public record. There will be breakout rooms, however, that are not recorded, and no commissioners will be present in those rooms. We will take note of your comments in those rooms anonymously. They will not be part of the county's official public record, but they will be part of the Racial Equity Collaborative's report without names. So only the main room will have ASL and Spanish interpretation, just as a reminder if you need either of those. We also ask you to remember to stay muted unless you wish to speak. And if you do want to speak, then you can either just physically raise your hand and we can see your hand, or you can use the raise hand feature you can find by clicking on the participants list. And of course, there's also the chat function if you prefer to make comments there. So we're going to now move on to a quick poll from all of you. One of the primary reasons for this listening session is to discuss law enforcement's use of body-worn cameras. So while we're in this room together, we're going to ask a couple of anonymous polling questions to get your quick feedback. We know that everyone has a different understanding of body-worn cameras, and we're not expecting anybody to be experts. So just, there's no wrong answers. Just let us know what you think at this time. And at the end of this session, if we have time, we also will do this poll once again. So you can go ahead and read these answers and go ahead and record your responses. So this first one is, how do you feel about equipping all law enforcement with body-worn cameras? So it looks like we're getting a little more strongly agree. We have some not sure. Of course, this is a complicated issue. So, and there are a variety of different opinions about the usefulness of the cameras. Right, it looks like, I think, we'll just give a little bit more time. If you haven't had a chance to answer this question, you can state that you strongly agree about the use of law enforcement wearing body-worn cameras. Okay, so we've got that. Those are our results now, with 48% strongly agreeing. And then we have 19% who are unsure. This is a complicated issue. And then I think that's another 19% who strongly disagree, and some agree and disagree in the middle there. All right, thanks very much for expressing your opinion. We'll move on to the second poll. This poll offers some statements about the use of body-worn cameras. So read the statements and click on all of those with which you agree. And again, there are no right and wrong answers. Some of the questions or statements would be pro body-worn cameras and others would be con. So we have here, I believe body-worn cameras, the first statement, intrude upon the privacy rights of residents. The second statement, promote accountability and transparency to the public and serve in training and evaluation of personnel. Having a body-worn camera supports training of personnel. Help provide compelling evidence in criminal prosecutions. Having that evidence that is recorded from the body-worn camera. We have here unnecessarily increased police budgets. They are expensive. And so there's never enough funds to go around. Require trust in the police to turn on camera when engaging with the community. Of course, the police can or don't have to have those on. And then the last statement there, can produce video that is edited to misrepresent or distort the situation. So it looks like we still have a few more people to vote, so we'll give you a little bit longer to express your opinion, and please vote on all of those with which you agree. Looks like we're getting quite a few folks who feel that they do promote accountability and transparency to the public by having those recorded images. Also some concern, right, that that's our highest polling agreement, and then as well this agreement that they can be the video can be edited to misrepresent or distort the situation, which of course is of considerable concern. Okay, so I think county staff, I think you can close the poll at that time. Thanks very much. All right. So at this point, we're going to transition to our breakout rooms, which is the opportunity where we will really have a chance to hear more directly from you. We'll have about 35 to 40 minutes in the breakout room, and then we'll do a short recap when we come back together. So to make things go as smoothly as possible, everyone will be assigned to a breakout room. This will happen automatically, so you don't need to do anything, except with the exception of the county commissioners, which they will be staying in the main room to further discuss the topic of body-worn cameras. If there's time in the main room, we will also discuss issues of racial equity and racial justice, homelessness, and affordable housing. Once you're in the breakout room, you have a couple of choices. So if you prefer to be with the county commissioners in this main room that I'm facilitating, then just click the leave button and you'll be returned to the main room. If you wish to stay, however, in that room, you can stay for a period of time and then leave. But once you come back into the main room, you'll need to spend the rest of your time there in the main room. In the breakout rooms, you will begin your conversation either on housing and homelessness or racial justice, racial equity, depending on the desires of the group. Okay, so are there any questions? I see Pedro, I think you've got your hand raised. I think we do have a minute if you'd like to say something to all of us. Go right ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Pedro. Hi, Pedro.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Those of us who have noticed the patterns in our history can see the writing on the wall. The all-white board of commissioners, initially decided without community input to respond to the uprising by funding body-worn cameras while increasing the sheriff's budget in spite of the overall reduction of the budget. And a coalition of Black, Indigenous people of color, community orgs like Reimagine Oregon and the Community Reinvestment Proposal clearly communicated to you that the investing in body-worn cameras was not the best interest, in the best interest of our communities. They are ineffective and they helpfully offered a solution to defunding the sheriff. So it seems that you don't really want to listen to these community orgs because for whatever reason you're investing in maintaining these racist structures like over-policing and underfunding community services. However, you are also heavily invested in appearing supportive of Black, Indigenous people of color communities. So funding body-worn cameras is how you can take your cake and eat it too. Appear concerned about the problems while knowing that body cams won't solve the problem. Similarly, you want to appear not to be dismissive of the respective community orgs, so you are holding these listening sessions, again, knowing that it will not actually influence your decision. From all the indications you've given, I can foresee that you will push for body cams after these listening sessions anyways, incite the individuals, probably especially individuals of colors who express support for these body cams and a resistance to defunding. And how do we know you're going to do this? Well, first you mentioned that the sheriff doesn't attend these sessions in order to not influence community input, yet you share documents about body cams recommended to you by the sheriff while not sharing from Reimagine Oregon's information on the Community Reinvestment Proposal. The polling questions only speak to the possibility of having body cams or not having body cams, and ignoring Reimagine Oregon and the community reinvestment proposal demands on the defunding of the sheriff. I also know that you intend to skew input because of in the last session, after someone pointed out that you have not listened to community orgs with research, and so I will doubt that you'll listen to individuals' anecdotes and sentiments either. You bizarrely responded, not all people of color are against body cams. One has to wonder, why did you say that of all things? Any statements with not all people of color will be true. However, you did not say that not all people of color are in favor of body cams. Not all people of color want to maintain the police budget and community budgets as they are. So no, Chair, you made the one non-enlightening statement that jived with your idea of the body-worn cameras. So your intention of selective hearing is already quite clear.
Thank you, Pedro, for that statement. I appreciate your passion around this issue, and I think we're confident that the county commissioners are listening, and hopefully we'll really be taking your concerns and those of others to heart. I did see a note. I know, Rina, you've got your hand up, but I also see that Sushmita needs to go to work. And so I'd like, before we go into our sessions, because we're about right on time, just to give Sushmita a chance, because she needs to go to work. And so Sushmita, you asked for 90 seconds. So that's not much time. We'll give you those 90 seconds. So Sushmita, go ahead and share your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I've attended all of the last listening sessions, and there was something that kept not settling well with me. And so I needed to formulate these words. I've written it down. I'm going to try and read it all out. The passion, effort, and intent that the county and also community members are putting towards saving one career that has the ability to kill people, do you not feel is misplaced? If even half of that passion and effort had gone towards engaging and supporting small business owners, teachers, doctors, social workers, houseless community, youth, hunger, our farmers, wouldn't we all be happier? Why is this one career so important that we must get so many meetings while people's years of efforts, their livelihoods, their careers have all been sacrificed during this pandemic? Do they not deserve equal attention and engagement? Why is this one career so important, which has done more harm to people and their mental health than my career or business that connects people, celebrates people, embraces people, rejoices with people? Why is one career so important to the county, the commissioners, and the community that can create 10 jobs for every one job sacrificed, and in turn support 10 families, aka 40 individuals that otherwise, due to lack of opportunities, may fall onto untoward circumstances that could get them killed? Oh, wait, I forgot. Breonna Taylor was sleeping in her bed and was a medic. Why is this one career and their weapons that kill people more important than 70,000 small business owners in the state of Oregon who are still waiting for a measly amount to pay rent and utilities, resulting in 6 months of begging landlords, utilities, food banks, friends, families, nonstop, every day? Ask me, I have done it. And I have not just done it, I have done it on my behalf, I've done it for others as well. I've also helped make 7 suicide prevention calls. I am not trained in psychiatry. And imagine to know that a fellow community member killed themselves. I had to bear witness to that and still call myself a civic leader. My hand shakes as I say this. And by the time they get support, they are so begged out that they have no energy left to find relief because they have to start a new career if they are healthy and don't have children who will be at home. Why? I fail to understand why this job is so important. It is not the people, surely, because the government is asking other people to seek a different employment every day, or they will cut off the $200 in unemployment. Yes, people have been receiving strange calls from the unemployment department. Small business owners are asking them if they are willing to take up any job. And if by chance they say no, then their $200 per week is cut off. Is it the guns? Is it campaign money? Is it power? What is it? What is going to be your legacy? The ones who were elevated and celebrated in private circles, while the larger community accuses you of being deaf to our pleas, or that of leaders that decided community voices are more important than one's own voice? The same people that elected you are smart enough to guide you, because believe me, we are loud and clear. We are just waiting for that last signature of approval from you. Imagine that. We have given you the power to be the sound of our voice. Are you ready for acting on that?
All right.
Thank
Thank you, Sushmita. I really appreciate that. I know I'm coming from a small business owner and just seeing the impact that this pandemic has had on small businesses, that is such a critical place for government support and government intervention. So thanks so much. We are going to move to the breakout rooms at this point in time. And again, just a reminder that if you...
I have my hand raised for a while, and I just have a quick comment as well.
Okay. Is it Rina?
I'm so sorry. I will really keep it short, but.
Okay, thanks very much, Rina. Just trying to keep us on time so everyone in the group has a chance to share if they'd like, but yes. Go ahead and make your comment.
Absolutely. So Sushmita and Pedro's comments really resonated with me, and I wanted to add to what Pedro was saying about his doubts about the listening session. Here's why funding body cameras while not defunding the police would prove you don't really value community input, in my view. Because looking at it logically, community organizations provided research and asked you not to fund body cameras and to defund the sheriff's office. You deflected to individuals in the community. The community has had opinions all over the place. And if anything, there has been a tendency for people to change their minds during the session and become less favorable of body cameras after they hear testimony and see resources shared in the chat by other community members. So the conclusions are there is no critical mass of community members who feel one way or the other about body cameras so far. People are obviously in the process of learning about body cameras and their effectiveness and the viability of defunding the police. And if anything, we know that few community members are firmly in favor of body cameras. So you would have no basis, Board of Commissioners, of a majority or a consensus on which to base your decision to fund body cameras, but you will, I think, because you have that power and enough people will accept your manipulated report of the community input. And this, I want to stress, is how the cycle continues. And after hundreds of years of Black leaders fighting for justice for all of us, we still see Black people facing violence, death, hashtags, useless resolutions from government bodies, and meaningless policy reforms like the ones you're proposing now. But I really hope that I'm wrong, and I invite you to prove me wrong. And if you allow me, I'd like to end with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that Black people's greatest stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the KKK, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises Black people to wait until a more convenient season." Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rina. That's a beautiful and very challenging quote. For myself as a white person, I definitely take that to heart. Okay, so we are now going to move into the breakout sessions. Sorry, at this point we are moving forward into the breakout sessions, and please we'll be sure that you have a chance to talk when we get into those sessions. So county staff, please go ahead and put us in the breakout sessions. And again, if you want to return to this session where the commissioners will be hearing you, just click the leave button. Okay, so we're just going to wait another minute or two to see whether anyone from one of the breakout sessions does want to come back with us. And it looks like we have our county commissioners with us. Here we will have ASL interpretation as well as Spanish interpretation. So once again, in this main breakout room, the commissioners will be able to respond to questions via the chat. They'll also be listening and taking notes, but we do want to provide opportunity for everyone to speak. And again, if you are new, we want to prioritize your thoughts and your voice at this time. I want to mention that we have some support here. Michelle Borsay with Vision Action Network. She will be monitoring the chat for us and just making sure that I catch anybody who has a question or has a hand raised. And then Todd with Apano, he is our note taker, and there was just a note from Todd there as well. Just a reminder to remain muted unless you wish to speak. And so we're going to continue right now with this conversation about body-worn cameras. And then if time allows, we will discuss either or both housing homelessness and racial justice, racial equity, as well as other issues that are on your mind that do impact the county government. So just like to start by asking a question to those of you who are in this session about what thoughts you have regarding the poll, what you saw related to responses from the opinion polls that we had on the usefulness of body cameras and the impact of body cameras. So is there someone who would like to raise their hand, who would like to share your thoughts about the poll? So Jennifer's asking if we can see the poll again. Jennifer, I'm not sure if that's possible, but county staff, that would really be useful if we could see that poll again. There it is. Great. Okay, so that's the first poll. And that we saw that 48%, a majority of the folks strongly agreed that body cameras were a useful tool. And then we had, so anyone have, and let's go ahead and look at the second poll as well. Second poll question. And the second poll question, as you will recall, had some statements that were in favor of or opposed to the use of body cameras. And there was a sense that they do promote accountability and transparency to the public. But then we also saw that there was a recognition that they do require that police turn on the cameras, and that they can be edited. And then there's certainly the question of whether it is a good use of county resources to be funding body-worn cameras when there are so many other needs out there as well. So let's see, do we have any comments? Anyone who would like to share a thought, a question, either in the chat or share your thoughts regarding what we saw in the polls? All right, I'm not seeing any hands going up. So I'll ask you all another question as well then here. How do you feel that the use of police body cameras could affect your community? Does anyone have an opinion about how the use of body-worn cameras could affect your community, whether providing greater safety, greater accountability? Okay, Brian, I see you've got a hand up. Thank you.
I couldn't speedily get to raising my electronic hand, so I just raised my
That's good. I have the same challenge.
I'm a public defender. I'm a lawyer who represents poor people in court when they're charged with crimes. And I've seen the use of body cameras in a lot of cases when I represent people in Washington County because of not so much the sheriff's office, but other law enforcement agencies in Washington County do have body cameras. And I've seen cases where they do good, where they actually do promote transparency and do catch things that the police officer have lied about in their report or omitted in their report that are really important to the case, and help keep an innocent person out of prison. So there is some good that goes along with them. And I say that knowing that I'm, in a position of privilege relative to other members of our community, that I might not be on the receiving end of some of the bad that goes along with them. But my concern about the proposal to outfit the entire sheriff's patrol with body-worn cameras isn't so much the merits of the body cameras themselves, it's the cost and the idea that spending this almost $1.4 million on body cameras isn't the best use of the $1.4 million. If the point is to promote transparency and accountability for the police, we could devote that money to reaching that goal in other ways by increasing independent oversight, having citizens review police misconduct. Even better than that, I think, would be to invest our taxpayer dollars in front-end solutions to problems that address things like poverty and mental illness and substance abuse on the front end, so that we're not waiting until people who are struggling with those things end up committing crimes or getting accused of crimes and end up in the criminal legal system where it's very expensive to try to deal with those problems.
Great, really appreciate that, Brian, also from your unique perspective as a public defender, and then you're raising that really important question about, is there other ways to increase accountability and then also target dollars towards more upstream issues that then keep people out of the criminal justice system from the first place, or out of encounters with police. So great comments. Thank you so much. Jennifer, looks like you'd like to speak. Yes, go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Hi. I don't envy you your position. You have one bucket of money and have to determine how that is spent. It's kind of like, do I pay my electric bill and keep the heat on, or do I buy food at the grocery store? It's an unenviable position to be in. I do believe that body-worn cameras can help alleviate, or would hope that they would help alleviate, some of the unrest that we're seeing today, in that it provides additional evidence about what happened in a specific situation where law enforcement has had contact with the community. However, I also feel on the flip side of that, that there are certain members of the community that it doesn't matter what they see, they're going to believe what they believe, and their truth is their truth, and they will hold fast to the belief that police and law enforcement are evil. And I don't know where that belief is coming from. I feel that there are good police officers, there are good doctors, there are bad police officers, there are bad military members, there are good people in the government, and there are bad people in the government. I do believe that if an individual is found to have forgotten to turn on their body-worn camera multiple times during multiple incidents where there's been multiple complaints, that obviously points to an issue that needs to be investigated separately. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, in the end, I think that the money would be well spent if it keeps our community from experiencing the 93 days of unrest that's been going on in Portland.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I think you point to just the challenge with any budgetary process. It's always difficult to value. It is a value statement, right? It really is a value statement where we put our dollars. I think we also appreciate that recognition that there are some police who are doing a good job out there as well. And there are many people in our community who feel strongly about having a police force some sort. So let's see. So do we have any other questions? I don't see any questions right now in the chat. So here, you just feel free to, if you want to speak, you could put a note in the chat. You can also make yourself visible and just raise your hand physically so I can see you. I'd like to ask the question to all of you about, because we've had this debate about that reform is not working, that police reform doesn't work, and as Brian Deckard mentioned, about there are different ways to create police accountability. So that's a question I'd like to ask you all, is if from your perspective, what does police accountability look like? What would you like to see from your law enforcement? So we can either put notes in the chat about that.
Can I say something?
Sure, Pedro, go ahead. I appreciate that you paused to see whether somebody else was going to speak. So go right ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. To Jennifer's point about like whether or not the cops are evil, we don't like, I know some like really awesome people that were cops. Like I was a coach in the public school systems for a long time before COVID, and like the most dedicated parents were like police officers. So like I have a lot of love for these people, but we're talking about like systems and the like, why is it that like we've had generations of like police investments, we've had them forever. So why do they keep spitting out these evil characters with bad intentions and bad practices? And it's not about whether or not one person turns off their camera. It's the fact that these cameras can be weaponized against us. And I was riding my bike to the Beaverton Transit Center, and I was almost late to my bus. So instead of like walking my bike once I got to the transit center, I rode it all the way up to the bus, and there was some Beaverton cop just chilling in the Beaverton Transit Center. He gets out, he tells me to get off my bike, but I was already at the bus. So I get off and I start loading my bike, and he's like, "That was an order." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he basically like told me to stop moving when he was talking to me. And then he pointed to his body cam, because I was like, "Sir, I'm just trying to get on the bus." And like I made contact with the bus driver. He wasn't going to leave without me. He saw me there. And the cop pointed back. Well, one, he got like really physical and really like up in my business, and then said like, "All of this is being recorded." Kind of like in a threatening manner, like telling me not to do anything because he like had a camera on me. And I was just trying to get on my bus, and he was very aggressive. So anyways, back to the center, back to the question about what do I want to see from my police department? Before they get any body cams, I would love to see the police department move to making all of their disciplinary records public, so that we could like have oversight over what their disciplinary records, especially because there are school resource officers provided by Washington County Sheriff. And like, I don't want to see anything else from our police department, because the whole idea, like this meme is up here, is that we got to fund other services. I'm also curious about like the Washington Sheriff's Office, like how much money they spend on this silly podcast that they have on YouTube. They have this whole video production, like, that's not their job to create like, entertainment like that, like a podcast, and it's like PR. The cops are well represented in every chamber of government, specifically in Beaverton. They're at the Diversity Advisory Board, they're at the Human Rights Advisory Commission, and then they present to our city government every week. And I'm not like well versed enough in like how city politics or county politics is, but like I'm sure their voices are very well represented here too. So the point is less from the cops and more to everything else, like Brian said, like front end services that actually address harm and poverty in our county.
Okay, thanks, Pedro. And it's good to hear about your own personal experience, and as well as your frustration with the bigger system, and that recognition that there are good people who decide to be cops, and that there's real challenges with the system there. I do want to make sure I see a comment from somebody who has safety as their name, making sure that we have time for a general question. So we'll make sure that we do that. Before I open that up, I want to see whether anybody who hasn't spoken yet would like to say anything specifically around this body camera issue, around police accountability, what you'd like to see the police doing, what safety would look like from the police for you, or what else, specifically you would like to know. Pedro has said that he would really like to see disciplinary records made public. So
I think Rachel has her hand raised.
Okay, great, Rachel.
Hi. Let me lower my hand, I guess. I just wanted to say, like, I really appreciate what Brian and Pedro had to share. And I also agree, like, I've heard like body cameras can do good, but also can be used to intimidate. From my perspective, so I'm like a middle class person who lives in like a nice neighborhood in Beaverton. A lot of like, I haven't had that much contact with the police, but there's also been like a lot of times where I see like someone, like police get called in for everything. Like we had a drunk driver crash into a parked car in front of our house. and a police officer came. And what we really needed was like someone, you know, who could like respond medically to make sure that person was okay. And like a tow truck and like possibly like, you know, someone like a social worker. We didn't really need a police officer with a gun showing up in front of our house. You know, we called 911 because it was the middle of the night and that's sort of our reflex. But like, you know, I hear about these stories across the country, and like, what if that person had been, you know, a Black person or a Latinx person, and like, would the police officer had treated that person like the same way? Like, it makes me, the fact that like we have such a history of like in this nation of like racialized violence makes me scared to call the police sometimes, you know. And like, I'm glad we called 911 and that person got the help that the medical help that they needed. But I think having, like Brian said, like, you know, different frontline workers who can respond without causing that kind of fear of like, is something bad going to happen to people if someone calls 911 is really important. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. No, I think that's an excellent comment. I think there are some models in other parts of the country. I think Eugene has a model, the name is escaping me right now, of where really assessing who or what type of service is needed.
Yeah, I think it's called Cahoots.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that is it, Cahoots. Yeah, good model there for us to look at. Okay, just seeing whether any other, yeah, we've got it right there. Thanks, Brian, for putting that in the chat. I think we've had a few other people join us, so before moving on from this conversation about police accountability, what we'd like to see from the police in our community and body cameras, is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who has a comment or would like to put a question in the chat? And so if I don't see any hands come up, then I'm going to go ahead and we'll move to another. Okay, all right, great. So I want to give a moment, just we're doing fine on time here, but just want to make sure that the person who has safety as their name has a chance to ask their specific question of the county, and then we'll move on to a couple other issues. So go ahead, whoever you are with safety, you can unmute and share your question. Are you still there? All right. Okay, well, we'll come back to you then. Whoever has safety there, we would like to give you an opportunity to share your question. So let's go ahead and move on then. We have two other primary topics that we could look at. One is racial justice and racial equity, and the other one, homelessness and affordable housing. So if you want to put in the chat your preference for which of those two you would prefer to talk about, we'll just do a really quick poll to see whether people prefer to discuss. Okay, I see Jennifer has stated homelessness. Go ahead and put your thoughts, or if you're, you could put both if you are interested in both of those. Remember that chat is down there with a little bubble on the bottom of the screen. At least typically I think it's on the bottom, so you could write your preference in there. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anybody else putting a preference in there, so let's go ahead and have spend a little bit of time talking about affordable housing and homelessness, such a critical issue. As you know, Washington County and the cities within it received about 192 million of bond funds to build over 1,300 units of affordable housing by 2026. So that's $192 million of bond funds to build 1,300 affordable units by 2026. The need is estimated to be as high as 23,000 units. So we're looking at a drop in the bucket. In addition, Metro recently passed the Homeless Services Measure, which will generate new revenue for Washington County, tens of millions of dollars annually by 2023. And those are to provide specific services, whether that's mental health or services of those who are living in affordable housing communities. So just a question, if you have other questions or things you want to say, you don't need to respond to this question, but I'll put it out there anyway and then invite all of you to share. How can Washington County use these funds, so we're talking about this homeless service measure, tens of millions of dollars, to support chronically homeless people in our community? And what kinds of services should the county prioritize? So how can they use these homeless services funds, and what types of services should they prioritize? So we're really interested in hearing your thoughts related to that. This bond that was recently passed by Metro that will put a number of dollars into our community. Do we have any thoughts about this? Anyone like to share? Okay.
It looks like there's a comment in the chat from Jim. This is a completely lost cause and waste of time. The county sheriff is one of two organizations that I routinely vote to fund every 3 years. Please don't make me regret voting for these taxes.
Right.
Has a comment, law enforcement and ability to access housing are both issues of racial equity. Racial equity is not separate from the provision of services. And a few more comments there in the chat.
Okay, all right. Thanks for those chat comments. And I think we're getting some responses as well from Commissioner or Chair Harrington. So would anyone like to share their thoughts on how this is just a great opportunity for you to weigh in, as we talked about with budgets, how difficult it is to prioritize, and there will be a number of groups providing excellent services coming forward and saying this is the way we think that the county should utilize these dollars, these homeless services dollars, to support chronically homeless people. And I think at this point, if you've already spoken, feel free to speak again. This time, please keep your thoughts focused on this topic of affordable housing and homelessness, and how we would use these dollars to support homeless services. And of course, we understand, I think as some people said in the chat, that there's a real connection between policing and safety and homelessness. So is there anybody who would like to address this issue verbally? Like to say a word? Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to. Right, and certainly putting information in the chat is a good way to share your views as well. So another way of asking this, Jennifer, you've got your hand up. Great, go ahead and share your thoughts.
Hi, I again recognize the fact that this is very difficult to decide where the funding goes. Does it go to families with small children to house them? Does it go to those with mental illnesses? Those with mental illnesses, are they going to accept the housing and the services that might be wrapped around that? But one of the largest issues that I see is the fact that many of these homeless people are homeless simply because of the fact that they are sex offenders.
Hey, Jennifer, sorry to interrupt you, but I know some people are having a difficulty hearing you. So if you could just speak loud, you might have to yell into the mic because we really want to hear what you're saying. So go right ahead.
I've not been told that I have a soft voice, so that's new. Okay, so I think one of the largest homeless problems that we face is that around sex offenders. Those with, with a history and who have to register as sex offenders oftentimes find it hard to find housing because nobody wants a sex offender in their community. And these people cannot be housed together under current, I don't know if it's statute or local law or what, but there are restrictions around that. And if there's any possibility to work through that and provide some sort of housing for these folks, they might be able to begin to recover and become, productive members of society again.
All right, that's really helpful, Jennifer. So appreciate that. That's a group that certainly gets overlooked frequently. But if we don't provide stable housing to people, then having stable lives is going to be very difficult going forward. And anybody who is in any sort of post-prison, post-sentencing situation certainly needs a stable place to live. So I really appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Would anybody else like to address, perhaps Jennifer's brought up that concern related to sex offenders finding housing, and then also related to mental illness, and that people who struggle with mental illnesses are oftentimes more comfortable being on their own because of issues around anxiety and so forth. So any thoughts on other groups that that the county should really be paying extra attention to and have particular specific strategies, or if you want to address either of those two groups that I just mentioned? I don't see any hands up here. Okay. So here's another question for you related to in your own experience. We'd be really interested in hearing whether it's your own experience or friends, family members, about how COVID-19 has affected housing in your community, and what concerns you have around about evictions after moratoriums have been lifted. Oregon, as we know, extended their moratorium, I think, through the end of September, although if I'm not right on that, I'd love if somebody put in the chat. Right, okay, through the end of September. Great, thank you, Catherine Harrington. So any thoughts on that, or what you've seen, what you've been observing and hearing in the community from your place of your position in your work, or as a community member? Anyone would like to share? Okay, I don't see any hands going up right now. We do have a few more minutes. So let's just, I think we actually, we just only have a couple more minutes perhaps, but if anybody has any question or just any comment around county government, around what you'd like to see from your elected officials, we'd love right now for you to take an opportunity to raise your hand and share your thoughts, or put a comment in the chat. And again, it can be about any of these topics that we've mentioned, or any other topic that's on your mind and that is of concern to you. The role of the county is so important. So Commissioner Treese, did you? Okay, I saw you take your mic off. I think if we don't have comments from others, if Commissioner Scouten or Treese or Catherine Harrington, if you wanted to say a word about these topics that have been mentioned.
I have some comments.
Okay, good. Well, now I'm seeing that we have Safety has her hand up, so we're going to go ahead and take her first. So go ahead, whoever, you can take yourself off mute. Raise my comment in chat.
So there's a comment here from Safety. As a homeowner, I contacted County Code Enforcement regarding resolution for open violations in my neighborhood from 2018. Washington County Code Enforcement said they only have 2 officers and their budget doesn't allow for more, and to contact my commissioner. I sent a message a week ago and I am waiting a response.
Okay, we really appreciate that communication with the county, and I know the commissioners have noted that in the chat that you have asked that question, and so I want to make sure that you'll get a response. You'll get a response from them regarding that. So let me see. I think I heard.
If I could contribute, I think that Commissioner Roy Rogers has been able to join us today.
I did see Roy on the cell phone, or I saw the name Roy, and I wasn't sure if that was Roy Rogers or not. So that's great.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Roy, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you. I've been here most of the time.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure that was you. So thanks, Chair Harrington, for calling you out.
So it was hard to think about things to say regarding these questions around housing, houselessness, racial justice, because a lot of it's been said before, and we're just tired of having to repeat it. But I need the Board of Commissioners to come together on a listening session regarding the climate crisis. There was recently 2 hurricanes that impacted the Gulf Coast. Most of our cities in this country are on the Gulf, so or are along the coast. So sea level rise is going to ultimately screw over a lot of people. Like Houston could have been flooded. I have family there. Where would they have gone? They would have come out here, and that like is a racial justice issue. That's a housing issue, and all just like exacerbated because of the climate crisis. Oregon is now in a drought. Beaverton is talking about water expand their water services, and it's like so interesting to hear like the city government like talk about these issues without ever addressing the climate crisis and how like melting snow caps in Canada is going to affect our water flow here in Beaverton. So it's we need to see more essential services provided to the people so that people can be, so that these issues that we're talking about now aren't exacerbated and pushed over the top after a climate crisis. Could you imagine COVID with a water crisis here in our county? That would have been deadly for so many of us. So we really need to have like honest discussions about climate change and led by people who are going to be most impacted by climate change. And Board of Commissioners, we already know that's not you guys, but like you all are the power hoarders here. Like Catherine Harrington, you're married to a city council member, and Mark Santucci, like bless his heart, I know he's trying his best, but like it's just like out of touch and separated from the people who are going to be most affected by these issues. So we need to have a platform to speak about these things very, very soon, because housing, racial justice, immigrant rights, refugee issues, health impacts for the society or for our community as a whole are going to be affected when we have people migrating to this area, because it is like one of our last like luscious green environments in this country. It's like here in West Virginia. So like, the fires in California are impacting those people, and people already are migrating up to Oregon. And that's been a trend for recent years. So I really need to see progress on the climate crisis.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pedro. Yeah, I think with the fires, we're seeing the hurricanes, and unfortunately, this pandemic has taken our eye off of the crisis of the climate change, but it is also, from the point of many scientists, a sign of the climate crisis that we're in. And so we need to see leadership at all levels. I think that's pretty clear, because we all need to be involved as citizens and elected officials. I'm kind of surprised that the rest of the group hasn't come back, because according to my records or my timing here, everyone should have been back by 7:05. But until they return, I don't think they've returned yet. So we'll go ahead and Jennifer, you've had your hand up for a little bit. And then I know, Michelle, if you wanted to state some of the other things that have been in the chat. But go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you again. I would like to suggest, I know that there's been a lot of discussion around expanding the Washington County Jail. It is consistently over capacity, resulting in forced releases of inmates. And I know there's a whole process around that, but I'd like to suggest that alternative sentencing, electronic monitoring can play a role in helping reduce those jail populations. Also with a very robust pretrial release program that's properly funded and resourced with the appropriate law enforcement to assist with supervision of those individuals who are out on release to reduce risk to the community would be super helpful in reducing those populations and hopefully alleviating the need for expansion for a little while to come.
Great, Jennifer, that is so appreciated. In some of the past sessions, we've also had people point out the budgetary savings from pretrial release, besides just the fact that then people can continue to work and are innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
As well as alternative sentencing.
Yeah, not only to be able to continue to work, but to receive treatment programs as necessary as well. A lot of times folks are sentenced and they go in and they serve their sentence, and then they lose their place in whatever treatment program they were in and have to begin all over upon release. And that can be very, very disruptive to someone's recovery and success in those programs.
Okay, wonderful. That's great information.
Can I add to this a little bit? I just wanted to add a little bit to this, like just what I've read about the like electronic monitoring is that it also like people that aren't able to leave without notice the very short area around their home, which doesn't allow them to engage in the activities that they need to have a full life, like meeting up with their friends and going to treatment programs. I mean, I think they have maybe usually like some leeway to go to treatment programs, but like the things that they need to do to integrate into community. So there's like an example of a woman who wasn't able to walk her kids to school or like bring them even to the bus stop because it was beyond like 50 steps from her door or something like that. So just housing somebody in their house is not really going to be like an alternative that helps the community all the way. We definitely need to reduce the budget, the jail population, and including by doing like diversions that don't include law enforcement. Many of the things that people are in there for aren't even really like worthy of spending time on. So like pre-arrest diversion is something that I'd like to see. Like I'd like us to have something totally different than the policing that we have today, so that people can actually get the things that they need, so that they're not creating crimes of poverty, for example, or like people can get treatment and mental health care before things become an issue. So that's what I really would like to see. And yeah, I don't want there to be any jail expansions ever in Washington County. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And electronic monitoring is not a solution. So like, please don't like go overboard on that.
Great. Thank you, Rina. Yeah.
My name is Amy, actually. My name is Amy. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that, Amy. You sounded a little bit like Rina, but I'm glad to hear from you as well. So that's really appreciated. It's so clear that a number of you with us today have been paying really close attention to these issues. And so your input, I think, has been really invaluable. I know I've learned a lot. We want to take right now, we're welcoming back the breakout, two breakout groups with facilitated by Nathan Teskey of Bienestar and Jenny Lee of the Coalition of Communities of Color. And so hopefully one of you, Jenny, are you by any chance ready to share a brief summary from your breakout session? Looks like Nathan, you might be ready to go.
Did you want Jenny to go first? I'm happy to go.
You can go
Nathan,
first.
if you're okay, I accidentally clicked the notes off. Okay, thank you.
Great, go ahead, Nathan, then.
I will do my best. I know we had Hemi taking notes, and try to share. This is, I would say our breakout room had a pretty passionate discussion. As you said, Bridget, a lot of people who clearly been researching this topic on body cameras and doing a lot of thinking about it. I'm sure I won't faithfully report back everything that was said, but I'll do my best. There were opinions were expressed around not necessarily supporting body cameras, but someone said they were opposed to defunding the sheriff that provided needed services, especially in unincorporated Washington County. And then there was a discussion about what kinds of services the sheriff actually provided. Yeah, some folks were saying that could those services be provided by non-police or community safety folks that could be paid for that wouldn't necessarily be trained police officers. And I think there were a fair number of people in our in our room who were in favor, generally speaking, and I hope I'm characterizing this the right way, of moving funds from the sheriff to community safety net type programs, social work, programs to serve the homeless, schools, and so on. My sense is that was probably majority in our room, but there were differences of opinion as well. Let's see. One point that I thought was, there were a couple of things that struck me, and this is just me, so please, anyone from the breakout room who wants to share their opinions, not in this context, but later in writing or another forum to the commissioners, please do so. But me personally, I was struck by someone referenced a program in Eugene called Cahoots that apparently is a program to allow people to call a non-911 number to not engage law enforcement, but for other kinds of services. And maybe the county is already aware of that, but that struck me as an interesting area to investigate. A business owner shared that in their business they've had cameras and that it hasn't actually really served the purpose, the security and safety purpose, to prevent, for example, shoplifting from their store, which I thought was interesting, and there was a long discussion about that. And then maybe the last thing I'll just say, someone raised the question of what is clarity on the purpose of funding body-worn cameras, and that might be something that would be interesting to hear from the commissioners, their sense of whether the purpose of the body-worn cameras is to promote public safety or to do other things. And there was reference made to a study about, for example, goals, and I'm probably going to miss a few of them, but some of the goals historically for body-worn cameras are to reduce complaints about the law enforcement agency, to produce evidence in investigations, to promote officer safety, and I guess the question was being raised, is the purpose to promote public safety, or is the purpose, are there other purposes of the body-worn cameras? Again, I'm sure I missed a few things, and I apologize to anyone who I didn't get your perspective in, but I think I got most of it.
Nathan, may I add something? This is Hemi, the note taker. And there was a question, one of the members of our community proposed, why don't we ask the police officers themselves? How do they feel about wearing cameras, body-worn cameras?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Hemi. Thank you. So we'll move, for the sake of time, and we'll move to Jenny Lee and her breakout groups report. So go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you. So we had a lot of great conversation that I think tied a lot of the community and public safety issues. So I think one theme that was very powerful was thinking about how, just again, going back to reimagining how we use our resources and what ways it would be most impactful for to advance racial justice. And so I think one really point I felt was powerful was about process, and that by using the community process to reimagine safety and identify community priorities would strengthen our community and build greater buy-in. So an example of one of those investments would be taking some of the excess funds from police to help the community with housing, which is definitely a priority, particularly given that a lot of housing is not necessarily affordable to community members, even when they qualify for it. There was also consideration of really how folks had to both be trained, but really do the deep work to address racism, to consider the humanity of their neighbors, and that how important it is how folks act along with the community. Sorry, just adding a few. We continued a pretty extensive conversation about body cams as well. And so recognizing that ultimately we've seen that it hasn't had an impact on reducing many of the incidents. There are many examples, including recently, where they didn't change things. Even bystanders with cell phones did not end up changing it. And so that really it's a fundamental issue of racism. And so otherwise, I think community members are really looking for leadership. There's a lot of different jurisdictions. So whether it's the school districts, the sheriff, Washington County, our cities. I'm sorry, Claudia, I'll turn my video off if it's, you can also maybe, okay. I don't have other options. I apologize. So there you go. So also talking about SROs in schools, how we can kind of collectively, take action to tie these pieces together, I think was another important theme that came out of it. We also had some specific questions that folks are looking forward to follow up on that we didn't answer in this session, but I think are also very illustrative of the priorities. So thank you.
All right, Jenny, thanks so much. Boy, the two of you really captured a lot of really important thoughts, important input. I think for the most part, it complements what we discussed in the main session. think just a couple of things that I would want to point out is we did hear from a public defender who has seen that at times the body cameras have been effective in helping to really litigate or assess what happened. But the question is whether or not that is the best use of the dollars, and if we can direct our dollars more towards upstream issues. And we had some conversations around how difficult it is to budget. We know we have, a limited amount of dollars, and there are so many needs. And so that budget is really a value statement, and whether or not that's the best place for the dollars to be put. Also a recognition just how frustrated people are with a larger system around police accountability and police reform, and feeling like just not getting anywhere. As much as we talk about this issue for year after year, we don't see the changes that we need to see. Also, brought up, and we've seen it in the chat as well, about Cahoots from down in Eugene, about as an excellent alternative, as a way to make sure that when there is an accident or fire or whatever it happens to be, that the right people show up, and the people who will really be able to address the issue without escalating the violence. We did have a little bit of time to talk about housing and homelessness, and had a real call out to pay attention to those people who are the most difficult to house, whether they're mentally ill, members who live with mental illnesses, who might be uncomfortable living in housing that has been established, and then sex offenders who likewise have to be registered and just have such a hard time finding a place, and that lack of stability then certainly affects their ability to reintegrate into society. And then we also had a call out around alternative sentencing and pretrial release, and other ways to save funds and reduce our occupancy in our jails, and reduce the need to expand our jails. And a number of folks in our group who are very knowledgeable about those issues. So that all these issues, just so appreciate your concerns. And lastly, something that is hopefully on a lot of our minds, climate change as a future possible topic for listening sessions that the county could lead, and the need for all of us to be engaged in that issue. Looking at my time, I think we do have time to put up our poll again. We'd like to have you all take those two questions, the poll again, now that you've had a chance to hear from others about body cams, and you may have heard things that you weren't aware of, and just see whether or not this has led to any changing of opinions. This poll is not to be used. It's not a poll that is stating in any way this is the sense of the county, of all residents who live in the county. But we would, it's still very useful for us to see your thoughts. So seeing a lot of strongly disagree, which that I think is a bit of a shift from what we saw before, having now recognized some of the challenges that come with the body cameras, and also recognizing that we don't have unlimited dollars, and is that where we want our dollars to go? Because like anything like this, these high-tech solutions don't come cheap. All right, so it looks like we'd still love to see some more of you vote, just to get a sense of where you are at this point. All right, we're at 63% have voted. So if the rest of you, we'd love to see a few more people vote, and then we'll share the results here in just a minute. All right, we get a couple more people who want to vote, then all right, I think we can go ahead and share the results now. Okay, so I believe that this was a bit of a shift. There's still folks who feel strongly that they are really important as one of the tools to help hold police accountable. Great, so thanks very much. So let's go on to the second question, and we will look at those pro and con statements related to the body cams, and give you all a chance to rate your thoughts, communicate your thoughts on that. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Right. It's interesting just to think about whether what we've heard today has helped us to look at things a little bit differently, or whether it has affirmed the perceptions that we had when we came into this, because we know that certainly this is all about having the county commissioners really hear from participants, from all of you residents of the county, but it's also a really interesting way for all of us who live or work in the county to hear from one another and make connections and see what people are thinking. So we'll just wait a little bit longer to see whether others want to share their opinions about these statements about body cams. And while that's up there, I just want to ask for all facilitators and support staff, just remember to stay in the room when we're finished, because we'll do a brief debrief, and it will be brief because it's a beautiful sunny day and we want to get on to other things and enjoy this Saturday. But if you can, all of you who have been facilitators or support staff, note takers and chat monitors, great to have you in the room. Okay, I think let's go ahead and share the results then of the poll, and then we'll just be able to compare this from the last time around, or the poll that we took at the beginning. Okay. All right, so thanks so much. I think we can take the poll down now. Once again, really want to thank all of you who participated. And also, I do appreciate those of you who are back in. If this is your second, third, maybe even fourth session that you've been with, I felt like you did respect our intent to really hear from others and to try and keep your comments relatively brief. So this is such valuable information from the county. We can go ahead and take this poll slide down. I'm sure you're probably trying to do it and I just still see it perhaps because my internet is slow. Or maybe I need to take it down myself. There we go. All right, that did it. So thanks to the team who facilitated this, and to our Spanish interpreter, to Victor, and I think Mary is the name of our American Sign Language interpreter. So really appreciate that. And Chair Harrington, before we close, we'd love to just hear a few final remarks from you.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you to everyone who has attended today, participated in the breakouts, as well as contributed your thoughts over the chat. We commissioners will be reviewing all of this input as it is provided to us in the full report, the comprehensive report from our facilitators. As mentioned earlier, this has been a listening session for us. It's quite challenging at times for us to know that we have the answers to some, not all of your questions, but this isn't a forum for us to provide all that input. I can say personally that I have heard some perspectives here and input that I hadn't previously thought about. So these sessions continue to have great impact and value for me, and I appreciate that. Our last session will be on Monday. That is one that we've tried to set up to be a comfortable forum for people with disabilities. And then it'll take a couple of weeks for our contractors through our community-based partners to put together the report, and it will be presented and discussed with us at a work session on September 22nd. I hope that many of you will join us in our October community investment conversation, where we'll be providing further accessible information about the county budget. I know from these 5 sessions that many of you are very interested in better understanding our budget. This will be the 2nd year in a row where we are doing things differently in order to make the 6 different budgets of Washington County much more accessible and understood by all of us. So thank you. I know I'm getting a little long-winded here. I'll stop at that. Thank you.
That's great, Catherine. Thanks so much. I know that the staff at Adelante Mujeres, a number of us participated last year in the in-person community investment conversations, and they were real learning for us and an excellent way for us to provide input. So we'd love to see some of you or all of you back for that. So with that, we will close this session. And again, thanks so much for your participation, for all the excellent ideas that you shared, and for your respect for one another as well. Just greatly appreciate all of that. So we'll go ahead and say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
At 164 left, coming down, off the right as well.